and welcome to our educational instructional videos. This is the UMO Helsinki Jazz Orchestra trombone section, and today we're talking about the trombone section playing. The gentleman started off with an excerpt from Thad Jones' wonderful big band composition, Cherry Juice, to sort of get started. And the order of how we're going to do things today, we are going to go chronologically sort of through the history of big band trombone playing, starting in the late 1930s and moving up to the present time and age, and sort of talk about some various subjects, different topics. And I would, at this point in time, like to thank Rasmus Soini and the Finnish Big Band Association, because Rasmus Soini was in touch with member big bands of the Big Band Association, and he helped gather specific topics for us to talk about. And thank you to Kasperi Sarikoski, our lead trombone player, who has organized these topics and has put musical examples together with the various topics. So we hope that we'll be able to cover most of the topics, and maybe we'll discover some topics we didn't even think we were going to talk about. So I guess I'll give it over to you, Kasperi, to start talking about our first excerpt and the first topics.
Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome on my behalf as well. We'll jump straight into this with a Glenn Miller classic, Moonlight Serenade. So as Ed mentioned, we'll be talking about some early music to begin with. Start from the early part of the jazz canon. So a few swing era tunes for you to begin with. Moonlight Serenade. This is a clip from the ending, and the reason why I would like to perform this to you is to just demonstrate some of the stylistic things from that era. Mainly slide vibrato. I know a vibrato is something that is a question that comes up rather often amongst students and amateurs and who play the trombone. And the slide vibrato mainly belongs to the swing era. It's less common later on, but when you're playing the music of Glenn Miller, for example, this is very appropriate. If you listen to the old recordings, you can hear that they're using slide vibrato on actually almost all the longer notes. So here we've got some dotted quarter notes, some half notes. So we like to use them on those. The way we do it is we wait just for a moment before we let the note sit for a moment, and then we start adding the vibrato. But you can make up your mind and just do it however you want and decide in your own section, but this is the way we do it. So little slide vibrato on the longer notes, excluding the last notes. You know, if you've got a fermata or a long chord, then it's just better to let that one sit straight, you know, without any vibrato. But here's a clip from Moonlight Serenade by Glenn Miller's Orchestra. Yeah, listen out for the way we use the slide vibrato.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, in addition to the vibrato, which it sounds like, very homogeneous in your use of vibrato, obviously everybody listening to each other, maybe this would be something else to talk about. I think when I'm listening here live in the room with you, I notice that the balance in the section is also very, very good. Now, is this something that you've worked on and discussed, or is it something that's sort of come through playing a lot together as a section? And Is it something, for example, the responsibility of the section players? Do you think about this a lot? How do you adjust? I mean, maybe tell me a little bit about how you achieve such a great balance within the section. And I guess maybe let's start with Kasperi. In your perspective as a lead player, what do you need to do to help the balance of the section? Is it something you talk about? Is it something you demonstrate? Maybe give us some of your concepts behind section balance.
Right. Well, to begin with, most of the things that I play have to be, or everything I play has to be in balance with the other musicians of the orchestra, naturally. So here we only have 4 trombones, but in an orchestral situation, I'd be listening to whoever I'm playing with, whether it's trumpets behind me or the rhythm section or the saxes. So that's very important to learn to listen to other instruments, not just your own section mates when you're trying to balance yourself in the orchestra. But as a lead player, I like to sit on top of a comfortable mass of sound. So I don't feel like I need to play louder than the others most of the time, because I'm playing a higher pitch, and that will most of the time just be heard as it is. So I like. I think it's more. I prefer a fuller lower body of sound. That's where the meat is. I don't know, Pekka, or Mikko, do you want to talk about balance from your perspective, playing the third trombone, for example?
Hey, hello to everyone. It's a basic rule that lower voices should play maybe a little louder than they think would be appropriate, because the level kind of hides the third trombone sound very easily, and that's why. And also it's a basic rule that for instance, like crescendos, third trombone should do like a little more than maybe lead trombone. So the balance would be fine that way.
And maybe here's a question, Pekka, because I know you also play a lot of lead trombone in big bands. So what do you have to do to your sound when, for example, if you're playing third as opposed to lead? Do you think about using you said louder a bit, but even maybe a bigger sound or a broader sound, or do you do anything to you also change your sound quality, right?
Yeah, like fuller accent maybe and stuff like that.
Great. No, that's very good, because also the third trombone, sort of being next to the bass trombone, it's a very vital function to hold the bass instruments together with the tenor instruments. But then I guess maybe for second trombone, Mikko, what do you have to think about when you're playing second? I mean, obviously balance with the first, but what other things are you thinking about?
Mostly, the most important is listen to lead trombone and lead trumpet behind, and of course the second tenor, which is very many times playing the same things than I. That's my most important.
Thank you. But that's also a very good point, because a lot of times when we're working in the section, a lot of times we have a tendency, we only listen to the other section players. But of course, equally important for lead trombone to be listening back to the lead trumpet, for all the section players to be listening back to the lead trumpet, but also probably for the lower instruments to be listening, also having an ear on what the saxophones are doing. And I know for bass trombone that's very important, being aware of the bari sax, but that's also a very good point. Thank you. And we were having a conversation before where we were talking about working on balance within the section and a lot of these things, and the importance of having sectional rehearsals. Because I think, Mikko, what you mentioned before, could please tell us about the problems in the main rehearsal. If we're having a tutti rehearsal with the whole big band, what are the problems that happen, for example, for somebody who's playing second trombone?
It's mainly listening problems, because the lead and second trumpet is playing to my head, and I have drums beside me. Well, and the lead trombone bell is on the other side of the player. So I don't always hear them properly.
Exactly. Yeah. So in the whole, the tutti rehearsal, sometimes all you hear is second trumpet or first trumpet or drums. So that's why it's also very important to have sectional rehearsals, so you can concentrate on the section and work out a lot of details. In your sectional rehearsals, I've seen you guys rehearse before. How much do you guys talk about things and communicate, or is it mainly nonverbal communication through playing? Or is there a lot of verbal communication with questions and instructions and things? How do you divide that up?
We do talk about what we're playing, and I think as you mentioned, the section rehearsals, they sort of reveal often things. At least I find very often I hear things that I didn't know existed in the charts because there's a lot less noise going on around us, so all these little details pop their heads up. So I like to talk when it's necessary. Of course, I do believe the less you need to talk, the better. The more you can just listen and pick up things on the fly. I think that's always the way to go. But at times, it's necessary to say something and maybe have a discussion, because there may be several ways to play something. So talk about the way you want to do it with your particular section. Stylistically, breathing is often something that needs to be discussed. It's kind of sometimes hard to pick up on the fly. So little details like that, yes.
Right, because I think also a sectional rehearsal, it's a very good time to also talk about things like developing a section sound. This is also one of the goals. Of course, we want a big band. Each big band should have sort of an individual big band sound, an ensemble sound, but each section, developing a section sound, communicating. And another one of the things that we could talk about at this point in time is maybe equipment as well. Because if for our observant viewers, you might have noticed that our bass trombone player, Juho, he was playing a smaller bass trombone or a large bore tenor on the Moonlight Serenade excerpt, which he's going to continue to play now. And this is basically adjusting his equipment to equipment that would have been more typical for that era, for the 1930s and 40s, or actually probably in the 1930s, there wasn't even a bass trombone or a large bore tenor with an F attachment. It would have probably been 4 small bore jazz trombones in the section. And then only in the 40s was a larger bore instrument, or the predecessor of the bass trombone, introduced to the section. So that's something to think about, is adjusting the section's equipment to fit the music, which is, of course, something for a professional big band. It's easy because you guys have the financial resources to buy. How many instruments do you own? Buy 6 or 7 trombones and tubas. But it is something also to think about, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later. But would you like to add something about equipment, Kasperi, or anybody?
Well, I'll just say, I think for an orchestra like UMO, we play so many different types of big band music that it just doesn't make sense to approach everything with the same instruments. I think if you're playing music from the 1920s all the way up to contemporary music like we do, I think you need to consider what are the characteristics, what are the sounds that you're looking for. Obviously, you won't be able to get the same sound with every instrument. So for older music, I might even come up with a King 2B, an even smaller tenor, if I was playing this at a concert. But it makes it sound better. It makes it easy to play if you're playing the right equipment, and it makes it your job more interesting, in my opinion. So I think it's always something to think about.
Exactly, yeah. So actually thinking about, but of course maybe not getting crazy about it, but of course thinking about it.
Or perhaps getting crazy about
it. Or
it.
maybe there is a bit of craziness involved in the equipment, the discussion about equipment, but it's also a slippery slope when we're talking about brass players and mouthpieces and things. Oh, please.
No, that's really all there is to say. I think just one more point on this, on these excerpts that we're playing from the swing era is we're playing some of these rhythms much shorter than we would if the music was from the 50s or 60s. So maybe you'll be able to pick some of that up as we play our next excerpt. So listen out for the short quarter notes, short offbeats, which gives the music a sort of light, dance-like quality, which was, of course, very important at the time because the big bands were dance bands by and large. So that's another characteristic of the swing era.
Exactly. And while you're getting ready to play this next excerpt, also talking about, rehearsing, doing a sectional rehearsal without a metronome, without a time reference, so that developing a good section, sense of time within the section, a sense of swing within the section. Another exercise you can do at home with your big band trombone section, you can record your sectional rehearsal, record the section by itself, and then have a listen to see where are the weaknesses time-wise. Where are maybe some of the phrasing or the articulations, maybe where they are maybe a bit sloppy, not so tight, things like that. So recording yourself is also a very, very important and useful tool. And then, of course, for professional musicians like this, maybe it's less important to use a metronome in a sectional rehearsal, but this is something you can definitely do with a younger band or a less experienced band. Have a metronome going during your sectional rehearsal. Sometimes that also helps. So these are some things to really tighten up and improve the sense of time within the section, because everybody in a big band and everybody in the trombone section, we all are drummers on the inside. We do have to create our own sense of good time. And it is something that sometimes also happens. Instrumentalists, trombone players think, the drummer is responsible for the time. No, each and every one of us in a big band is responsible for the time. So this is a wonderful excerpt from Benny Goodman's King Porter Stomp and the UMO Helsinki Jazz Orchestra trombone section.
Go.